This episode of After Sex Ed is brought to you by Beducated, the Netflix of sexual wellness. Elevate your sexual happiness, intimacy, experiment, and deepen your connection with yourself and your partner today. Use the coupon code AFTERSEXED to get 65% off of the yearly pass and have access to all of the Beducated courses for 1 day for free. The After Sex Ed discount will be locked in for life. Click on the link to get it now, and thanks for tuning in. This week's episode of After Sex Ed is about sex, technology, dating, and hookup apps, and Beducated has plenty of courses that coincide with this topic, like hookups, learning the seductive art of casual sex, leveling up your virtual romance, and daring digital seduction. Thanks again for tuning in, and enjoy.
Hi everyone, welcome to After Sex Ed with Sabrina. My guest today is my very good friend, Greg, and we're going to talk about technology and sex and dating. And I have with me a cisgendered heterosexual male, and Greg, you're going to represent all of them today. There's a reason that I want a cisgendered heterosexual male. I actually put up like a call on Instagram and was like, I really want to talk to like a straight guy, a straight cis guy about my next topic, because I feel like sex and technology, what I'm reading, the research is showing that there's like technology impacts our sexual behaviors. There's no question, but I see really significant behavior changes in men, mostly straight men, mostly. Which is why you're going to represent all of them today. And I'm going to be like, what is your problem? Why are you like this? Do you want to like tell everyone a little bit about yourself? Or like, yeah, or even how we know each other or how you're doing during COVID?
Yeah, sure. In a nutshell, so my name's Greg. I'm 33. I work in the cannabis industry.
Yay! I didn't know that.
Yeah,
you were hospitality.
I was for 18 years, and I recently left because of all the pressure from COVID. I abandoned my hopes and dreams of owning a restaurant and jumped ship to the cannabis industry.
That's a good jump.
Yeah, very good jump. Financially, very good jump.
Oh, good for you. Oh my gosh.
And yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm currently single.
Which is another reason why I wanted you here today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess the other question is how I know you. I mean, my God, it was 13 years ago. We met traveling in a hostel in London, England, and then stayed friends. Oddly enough, met in London, England, and then came back to Canada and lived 15 minutes away from each other.
Yeah. Isn't the world like this big?
It's super tiny.
It's super tiny.
Crazy strange that, we met halfway across the world and we lived like 3 neighborhoods over.
Yeah. That's going to come up so much in this conversation about how like dating, technology and dating has changed. Like technology has changed dating so much in that like should I jump ahead? It's like our dating pools are so big, but people generally tend to like people that are like kind of close to them. You know, it's so funny how it's like you've probably met tons of people, but like, especially traveling abroad, and it's like a friendship that I'm not saying that I'm the only friendship that you've maintained, but it's like, it's funny, like the friendships that I know that I maintain from that, like, are you like, it's really, and Jen who lives in France, but that's like a different thing because we kept traveling together everywhere. But like, anyways, okay, so that's for another topic, but I'm going to start by asking you what I ask everybody, because this is about sex. How did you learn about sex? Do you have like a couple of main sources? Sometimes people are like, these are the top things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm a huge movie and TV fanatic. From a very young age, I remember seeing it in movies, and I remember this distinct switch that happened at like 11 years old, where I would watch movies with my mom, and if we were watching not an adult movie, but like an adult movie as opposed to a kids movie, and before there would be either nudity or sex or whatever, and my mom would just kind of be like, oh no, and I never made that connection of it being something that I was either interested in or aware of. It was just kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's the thing there. And then I remember being like 11, and I actually remember the movie. It was, oddly enough, it was an animated movie, like an adult animated movie that we rented from. Here's an old time
Blockbuster?
sentence. A
Yeah.
movie that I rented from Blockbuster
Oh,
on
wow.
VHS. Yeah, so we rented this movie that was animated that my mom thought would be okay. That was called Heavy Metal, and anyone who knows that movie knows that there's a ton of animated nudity in it. And I remember watching it, and the first time that I saw that, it was very like, oh, this is new. Like, I've seen this before, but I've never understood. Like, I immediately understood that. I was like, this is something that I, one, shouldn't be seeing at 11, and two, something that I'm now interested in.
It's like palpable. You're like, oh, what's that?
Yeah, I remember, like, I could paint you, I mean, if I could paint you a picture of my living room and exactly what it looked like when I watched that movie. And then from there, it was just, I mean, back in the day, like, I remember staying up and watching on cable TV the old late night shows, the Red Shoe Diaries, and things like that.
Man.
And that
I remember that so well. Remember the Baby Blues on City TV? Yes. Yeah.
Yes, I was just about to, I was searching for that name in my head. Yeah, those ones. And I remember, like, staying up, I'd say late, but it was probably like 11 o'clock. But when you're 12, that's like late night TV, and that being a thing. And I remember seeing that, and that being, my first, I guess, like, solo, being alone in my bedroom and seeing this come on TV, being like my first exposure to kind of sex on film. And that's really where I learned about it first, and I won't say understood it, but that's where I first saw it.
No, I love asking that question, because lots of people have like this image like really seared into their head where they're like, oh, I remember very well. And like people our age, because we're I'm an elder millennial. I think you're like smack dab in the middle millennial.
I'm an elder, I believe, as well. Unfortunately, I hate that term exists. There's geriatric elder millennial.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't see geriatric millennial.
Yeah, elder millennial sounds like something out of the Mormon church, but sure.
But like, for our, whatever we are.
People born in the 80s, let's just call it.
People born in the 80s, excuse me, a lot mention Playboys and penthouses and dirty magazines, and being at like a convenience store and seeing them on the top shelf and being like, I remember very clearly being like, what is that? Oh my God, those are boobs. And like a switch flips and you're like, I would like to see those, please. Like,
I definitely I had an exposure to that as well, but for whatever reason, that's not as clear to me as being like, I had an exposure to that when my grandfather passed away when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Mm-hmm. And I was helping my mom clean out part of the basement in their house, like my grandma's house. And he had a stack of Playboys from the 70s.
Yeah.
And I remember going through them and seeing them, but I was so young. I was 7, 8, 9 years old that I remember it being a thing that my mom was like, you shouldn't look at that. But I had already looked. Yeah. But I wasn't interested. I was just like, oh, that's a thing. Like, that's women. I know women. I have them in my life.
Yeah.
And these are naked ones. But I didn't, it wasn't like when you get a little bit older, you have that feeling of like, I'm not supposed to be looking at this, but I want to.
Yeah.
I didn't have that feeling yet until I was a couple of years older. And then it happened with, like TV. And then, definitely after that, you're constantly in convenience stores. And I used to have a movie store in Mississauga that had like those saloon corral swinging doors.
How old are we? Yeah.
You would walk through, and they had the adult section with all the porn movies in the back. And I remember being in, I think it was a Jumbo Video actually.
Yeah.
And I would see that and always see these like adult men walking in and out. And I was like, I wonder what's in there. And then I finally found out. I like looked under the door and you could see all the covers of all the naked women. I was like, oh my God. It was amazing.
My sister and brother and I would like dare each other to go in, or like, how much can you see? And like, I saw a boob. I saw this, that. I was gonna say before we move on, 70s porno mags, like how much bush, eh? How things have changed. I saw an old. Oh man, we were looking at in one of my units in school. It was like pornography, like through the ages kind of thing, and like the old stuff is just like body hair is so different. Like we're hairless.
It was.
Even the men are like, I mean, like men, I feel like you have more flexibility in that. That's for sure.
I
But
mean,
like,
in real life, yes, I would agree, but
yeah,
not like in porn now. I think
they're pretty
everyone's hairless.
like, what's up with that?
I don't know. It's weird.
But
It's not an attractive quality, but it exists.
hairlessness.
On anyone, I don't know, like
Yeah.
completely like it's never like it was never there. I'm just like, okay, but we know that it is there. This is just like I don't know. You're not fooling anybody into thinking that like, oh, it naturally looks like this. You're like, no,
Yeah,
I
no,
don't think
there's
it
a lot
does.
of prep and upkeep
Yeah.
that like makes it that way. Well, you're a really flexible guy because, I think if you're, a younger generation, you're growing up with this style of porn, you've seen all kinds of different pornography, you've seen all kinds of different stuff, and I know that you've had sexual relations with real life living breathing women who are
Yes.
not looking exactly like that. So you're like, yeah, it's not an expectation that I have for you to be constantly like that. Whereas
Yeah.
younger men, I think that there might be something going on there that they're thinking, oh, this is how women look and this is how women behave and this is what they're supposed to be like.
Well, I think a part of that is I think it's less from porn, and I think that expectation more now comes from the constant exposure to social media that we
Yeah,
didn't have. Because now,
yeah,
like, it's funny, you see all the memes of, people post pictures of themselves when they were 13, 14, 15 years
yeah,
old of us growing up. And I'm like, this is what I look like at 15. And this is what
yeah.
15-year-olds look like now. And I'm like, they look like adults now.
Yes.
I didn't look like that when I was 15. I looked like an awkward piece of shit. Like I was terrible.
I mean, like, I feel like we could talk about, and that even lends itself to this whole conversation. But I want to start at the beginning.
Sure.
And the reason I keep like going to men and boys and blah, blah, and like why that like keeps going that direction. But anyways, okay. I want to start this episode 11 minutes in about this guest speaker or whatever. We watched this video on this man. He's called Marty Klein, and he's great. And he's a sexologist and sex researcher, and he's got this lecture that he gave. I'm not sure at what conference, and it's called Porn Panic, Public Health, and Porn Literacy. Okay, so anyways, to sum that up really quickly, and I did a TikTok video about it as well, he basically argues that technology has impacted human sexuality for a very long time. And every time there's a technological innovation, human beings use it for sex immediately. And every time there's a new technological innovation, there is an immediate pushback from like the religious right, the conservative right, whatever, that this new technology is going to be used for porn and for sex, and it's going to deviate us and make us dirty. So he starts with the printing press, and he says as soon as this is invented, there is an immediate pushback from that group that's like, people, they're going to print porn, books and magazines are going to corrupt your mind. Like that narrative of like, this thing is going to screw the kids up. This thing is going to make you a pervert has existed like forever. That's been around for a really long time. Fair. And it usually runs in tandem with technology. So anyways, printing press, this happens, and then we start putting porn on it pretty much immediately. People are printing erotica, naked pictures, cameras are invented. Oh my god, photography, like people are going to take naked pictures. That's exactly what we do. Phones, even, like, it's not so much that we're going to have sexy conversations or sexy chat lines, which does happen, as we know.
Absolutely.
But it's like, if there's concern, it's going to impact marriages, because now conversations can be very private. You can have like secret rendezvous, and I guess before that, to like get a message to your mistress or a message to your secret lover must have been really difficult. To put it in like a carrier pigeon, just send it and be like, oh. And then of course, like movies, moving pictures, television, same thing. We put porn in it right away.
Yeah.
So we're going in this direction. We're like, so technology is impacting human sexual behavior without question. Then the internet comes, and there's immediate pushback from the conservative right. This new communication tool is unregulated. We're not monitoring it. People are going to put porn on this right away, and like they're right, and that does happen. You know,
I imagine they were right. Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't wrong about that, and that pornography, like in my mind as an elder millennial, and not even my mind, in reality, has changed a lot. Like, it's so accessible. The accessibility is like, I can look at it. It's on my phone. Like, I have a WhatsApp chat with my friends. You could argue that half the time we're sending porn pictures or what. You could make that argument, but it's so accessible. And the style of porn has drastically changed and I don't know if you'd agree, based on your, baby
Oh
blues
yeah,
from City TV to now is like
absolutely.
night and day,
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I
so like,
mean, I remember having a like to the technology point. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine. I don't know how long ago, 4 or 5 years ago, about he bought. He's a big gamer, and he bought one of those like VR headsets for PlayStation.
yeah,
And I was over at his house trying it, and it was pretty new. And I remember sitting there and being like, "I wonder how long until there's VR porn." And he went, "Oh, it's already exists."
it's
And
already
I was
there.
like, "It's been like VR had existed for like a year at this point, maybe
Yeah.
like 2 years." And he goes, "Oh, there's definitely already VR porn. Like it
2
happens." Yeah,
years.
you're right.
Yeah. Oh, it's like this, right? Well, there's
Yeah,
even arguments that like it's not even that technology or that human innovation is impacting sex behaviors. It's like the other way around. That like sex motivates us to do things. Like sex motivates us
yeah,
to
yeah.
create. So like there's
Yeah, I
arguments
could
that
see that.
say like really what you're doing is motivated by sex whether you know it or not. But like what I want to talk to you about, I guess, is that like, okay, so the internet comes out, there's immediate pushback. People are like, oh my God, you're going to use this thing for porn. They're right. You know what I mean? Right away. There's pornography, like instantly, immediately, it's there. So, like, okay, so this is what's happening. In addition to pornography being readily available, there's also dating apps and hookup apps and stuff. So I don't believe that he talks about this in his lecture, but we talked about it in my program. We're like, the internet has changed our dating behaviors, like without question.
Yeah,
Um, the biggest thing, though, the biggest technology that changed our sexual behavior, believe it or not, really, we don't know yet if it's the internet, but so far it's the car. So the car is invented and it changes dating completely. It
really.
changes courting. Yes, entirely. So historically, to date, depending on where you're from, but like, let's say you're from Canada or the US, like a man would go to the house of a woman. She lives with her parents. He likely lives with his parents too.
Yeah,
And then you don't have a car. So you have to sit there and talk to her parents and get to know her family. And you're like,
yeah,
okay, great, great, great. And then, the only time you can ever really be alone is when you're married, is when you move out
yeah,
into like your own house, right? Your dates are usually chaperone. You're not going anywhere. So the car is invented. People go to the house. Now it's like, we can get the hell out of here and we can do whatever we want. So like now you've got privacy. You've got mobile privacy. You can go to the
yeah,
park. You can go to Makeout Point. You can go to the drive-in. So teen pregnancy jumps. STIs skyrocket. It's like people are having tons of sex. So there is a, I guess my point and his point is that there is a very deep connection between technology and sex. There's no
yeah,
question. Okay, so now we're in the age of the internet. And as I was saying, you've got porn, that's one thing. And that's like a whole other conversation, but I do want to talk about it. And then there's dating apps and hookup apps. And like, so the way that we're dating is
yeah.
like very different, than how it was before. Now you have like apps where you can just like GPS, okay, who's horny? This one, we can hook up.
Yeah.
And does that mean that human beings, would you assume that human beings are having a lot more sex? I mean, I guess that's my question. Do you think we're having more sex?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I've just been having bad luck, but like, um, I think it's I think it's an illusion. Really,
Yeah,
I think it's alluded to the fact that the generations are having the newer generations with accessibility to these apps and the hookup apps, but I think it's a pure case of oversaturation in that you log on and there's just so many people that you're looking for that perfect 10. You're like, well, there's hundreds of women in my area. You're going to swipe until you meet that, Scarlett Johansson or whatever your Rachel McAdams perfect woman looks like.
yeah,
But that woman isn't necessarily on your app. So you spend 2 hours swiping and then all of a sudden you haven't matched with anybody because you've been swiping left for an hour and a half.
yeah,
And now you're just sitting at home by yourself. Like, I don't know. I feel like, someone who was single before the advent of dating apps and
yeah.
then now recently single again.
Mm-hmm.
And like the last time that I was single, none of these apps existed. There was dating websites.
Yeah. Man, when did the dating apps come? I should know this. I want to say 5 years.
I think it's been a little bit more than that because I remember them. They kind of the advent of them was just when I got into my last serious relationship,
Yeah.
which was 7 years ago now.
Yeah, I think it's like seven or so.
They existed. I hadn't
Yeah.
used them because I was a mid-20s, male who was like, I don't need it. It was had the same mentality as dating websites, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you just didn't need them. But I
Yeah.
feel like I am meeting less, and now also we're in a pandemic, so that might have something to do with it.
Right. That's got a thing there.
Yeah. Um, but I feel like I'm meeting less and dating less and just a lot going out and like potentially having less sex than I was when I was single. Now, I guess you could also correlate that to one, a pandemic, and two, I'm older. I'm in my 30s, so
Yeah.
there's a lot more women who are married and have kids already, and they're not out there. They're not at the bars, and you can't go to bars right now. So
Yeah.
there's so many. But I think overall, like if I were to put it in a nutshell, I think we're having the same or less. I think it appears as if we're having more because there's these hookup apps that exist, but I don't think they're doing much.
So you're not wrong. Like I think like there's all kinds of studies, and one contradicts the other and blah, blah, blah. But basically it's like we're having about the same, a little bit more, but not as much as you think. Like
Yeah.
really not as much as you think. With all of this accessibility and all of these people, what human beings are saying in the advent of hookup apps, I don't want to say in the advent of the internet, but anyways, whatever. The advent of hookup apps is that there's sex available, and like some people are having more of it, but what they're saying more than anything, human beings, is there's sex, but there's no intimacy, and that's what they want. They're like, I want a connection, I want a friendship, I want something, and like some people have called it the loneliness, not the loneliness pandemic, but like the loneliness crisis. That like lots of people, even pre-pandemic, were like, I have all these people that I can meet, but like what's happening, and there's studies that show this, is that there's just like, and you said an oversaturation, like your dating pool is so big.
Yeah.
You're overwhelmed by the options, and you're like, okay, there's so many people. Should I like hold out for someone better? And like the reality is that most people, like historically anyways, and I guess it's gonna look this, I don't know, that most people dated, married, had sex with people in close proximity to them.
Yeah.
It was just people they saw frequently. And like that's how you're gonna get to know somebody. There's a study that I saw recently that was saying that men, particularly men, like uniquely men, are like they're virgins longer. And men are even saying like below the age of 30, I wish I can remember the name of the study, and I don't remember, and I hate it when I can't remember. 1 in 5 men are even saying that they don't even have any friends, same sex, like that they're like, I just don't really talk to people. So like you would think that the way that things are going, that like the next trend in sex would be like VR sex porn, or like sex dolls or sex robots or something, like even more disconnection.
Yeah.
And I know that they're happening. Like I know that those sex dolls are out there. Like
they absolutely exist. Yeah.
Somebody DM'd me because I said something like this on TikTok, and they were like, no, they're out already. Like you can buy one. But then like it's like trending this way. It's getting slowly more disconnection, less intimacy, and then like boom, we get hit with this massive global health pandemic. People are like, the loneliness crisis isn't just like a small bite. It's like everybody's like, oh my God, I can't live like this anymore.
Yeah.
We are exhausted with virtual connection. Nobody wants to do that. They're like, no, I don't want to do this. That like, here's my thought. That like, like our sexual behaviors could like, technology impacts our sexual behaviors, and like it's trending like less intimacy, and it's going to trend even worse. But because of this pandemic, and because people are so lonely and so like crazy keyed up, that it's going to swing opposite. And that I think we might even swing pre-car era, where you're sitting in the living room of your girlfriend or boyfriend's house, and you're like, I'm just going to sit here and talk to your parents because anything is better than like this lonely virtual hookup bullshit, Yeah,
well, there's no real, there's no connection in it. And I've noticed that the thing is they're so, I think personally I've noticed the difference in dating and meeting women when I was single before. and meeting them. I met them organically. You know, you meet.
Yeah.
Like, I remember meeting. You know, I had met a girl that I worked with, and I met a girl that I met at a bar, and I met a girl once that I met like at a library because we were both, or a bookstore rather. We were both going to buy the same book, and we chatted and we had coffee, and it's much more organic because you're like, yeah, she's pretty, but we had a connection, and obviously, you know, I'm not naive to the fact that like the physical attraction is obviously a big part, but there's an organic connection there that happens, whereas that doesn't exist on dating apps. It's purely like, is this person hot? Maybe, but she's not what I'm looking for. She's not that perfect 10, so I'm going to swipe left.
Right.
But there is so much, but by the time you do swipe right on someone and you get a match, you're infatuated with the looks of this person, and then they turn out to be someone who you're not interested in at all. You know, for me, I matched with a girl once that was an absolute smoke show. And within 10 minutes of talking, I was like, oh, you are into all, like, you're a super religious person who doesn't watch movies and only listens to country music. And I was like, that is the exact opposite of what I'm looking for in a person.
Yeah.
We never in a million years would have hit it off in a bar.
Yeah.
We would have been talking to different people. She probably doesn't go to bars. She's super religious. So that organic nature of meeting someone is not present in online dating.
And people, like, there's nothing wrong with online dating. I know plenty of people who are married after meeting online and on apps and stuff like that. It's just, I think like, had this pandemic not happened, like, the thing is, we don't really know what COVID's really gonna do to us yet. Like, because it's not done yet. Like, is it gonna impact the way we've had sex? Yes. I think it's gonna impact the way that we do it's already. If I hear the new normal one more time, I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. I'm gonna burn whatever my house down. I don't want to hear the new normal anymore. But like, COVID impacting sex behaviors, there's no question it's going to.
Of course.
The thing is, it's gotta conclude at some point. So we can actually zoom out and be like, okay, what the hell did it do to people? Like, and what do we want? And like, I think we were like, this is the other thing, and I believe it's Marty Klein, and if I'm wrong, I feel bad because I got to find out who said it. There's a really great sexologist who talks about sexual revolutions. We had a sexual revolution in the flapper era. We had a sexual revolution in the second wave feminism era, so 60s, when the birth control pill comes out. And he argues, and I'm pretty sure it's Marty Klein, he argues that we're due for a third. And like, either we're in it or it's coming. And I'm pretty sure it is him, and I'm pretty sure it's 2017 pre-pandemic. So nobody could have predicted that this was going to happen.
No.
And I think that he might be right. Whoever said it, let's say it's him. I think that he's right that we're due. Something's going to happen. And like, we were going in certain directions. Like, Me Too was big. That's a huge change in our sexual behaviors. I'll say queer as an umbrella term. Like, queer sexuality is like, the LGBT community has fought a lot of battles. Is it perfect? No. Is it getting better? Yeah. And I think everybody's aware of it now, that we want to say the right things. Our language is changing. We're more inclusive. Like, things looked a certain way, and then this like pandemic comes, and everyone's like, I'm horny, I'm crazy. Like, what's gonna happen? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can't predict it. That's literally why it's unpredictable, is because we don't know. If we could predict it, we would try.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, leave it to the human race to, you know, like, try and predict. We try and predict everything, and we're like, I'm not a researcher by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like we're wrong like 99% of the time. We try and predict everything, and we're never right.
So there's a sex researcher, and his name is, he's a Kinsey Institute Research Fellow. His name is Justin J. Lehmiller. I'm going to say it wrong, but he's got a podcast called Sex and Psychology. It's amazing.
Okay.
I follow him on Instagram. The Kinsey Institute, if you don't know, is like basically it's either the world's leading sex research institute, or like it's in the top 3 or 5 or something. It's very famous.
Okay.
Alfred Kinsey is like, there was a movie about him. Liam Neeson played him. He's a sex researcher.
Yeah. Where the Kinsey scale comes from, right?
That's where the Kinsey scale comes from. Correct. Right.
I know that much. That's all I know.
Okay, cool. Well, you know more than most.
I'm aware of him. That's
you're
about
aware
it.
of him. So this person, Justin Lehmiller, I'm going to say his name wrong, does a lot of research with the Institute, and he does a lot of work on sexual fantasies. which is so interesting because there's not a ton of research. But anyways, this is what he posted recently, and I think it speaks to what we're talking about. I'm just going to read verbatim his post. It says, although rates of online dating rose during the pandemic, rates of people sending nude photos decreased. Okay. Doesn't that shock you? I was like, and then I'm looking at it, I'm like, no, this doesn't shock me at all. It's, I think, in keeping with what we're both saying. People are lacking intimacy.
Yeah.
The world shuts down. The only way you can be intimate is virtually. You think sexting spikes? It doesn't. It drops. What the hell's going on? So how are people interacting sexually?
I think they're not. That's like, speaking from just personal experience, like there was, I think at the very beginning, like I mean, not to go down like a rabbit hole, but I have in a very unique situation, ended, well, my relationship ended about a month before the pandemic really hit North America hard.
Okay.
So like late February, I ended an engagement of a year and a 5-year relationship. So the beginning of the pandemic, when it was like hardcore, I was newly single for the first time in 6 years.
Oh, such a bummer. I'm sorry.
Right? Yeah. Literally the worst time it could have happened. The worst time.
Yeah.
But I was also newly single for the first time. So I was on, like I was trying to like deal with all of the nonsense and the emotional crap or whatever. So I did. I had some people who would message me, and turns out that I had some friends from throughout my relationship that wanted to be more than friends. And there was like a bit of an uptick of that virtual kind of interaction, like the virtual sexting or whatever you would call it. But that was right at the beginning when everyone, I don't want to say wasn't taking it seriously, but for lack of a better term, we were told flatten the curve 2 weeks. We thought we were going to be out of this in a month or two.
Yeah.
So everyone was like, yeah, some time off work. I'm going to watch some movies. I'm going to build a shelf. I'm going to send naked pictures to this guy that I know, or I'm going to send naked pictures to this girl that I know. And it was like it wasn't fun because it was scary, but it was an experience that none of us had ever dealt with before.
Yeah.
So there definitely was. For me, there was that small window where there was like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing because I haven't done this in a long time.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, it lasts 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, and now you're like, I think now everyone, you hear the term COVID fatigue.
Yeah.
I think everyone's just exhausted in every facet of their lives. They're just like, I don't want to date anymore. I don't want to keep trying to go to bars, and I don't want to keep sending nude photos to strangers who are going to unmatch me as soon as they get them. Like,
yeah. And there's so many more ways to get if there's so many more ways to connect to people, then there's so many more ways to be rejected by people. So like you can get rejected on Tinder, you can get rejected on Facebook, you can get rejected on Instagram. People can reach you in any way they want. So like, oh, I couldn't find you. Like the era of like, there was one phone in a house. That's how we grew up. And like, I called you and you weren't home. Like, and I missed you. And it's like, oh, like
he'll be home later.
I'll be home later. Or like, oh, maybe he doesn't like me. Oh no, he called. You were just out. Like, you're like, oh, like, it's like that. That's like not a thing. Like you can catch me anytime.
Everywhere.
Like, everywhere.
And I think that's part of the, I like, as whether you're talking about a relationship or as a new relationship, like I had a brief new relationship in the 2 years since oh my God, pandemic is 2 years now.
Yes.
But since my split, I had a brief new relationship, and there's no, like dating before the dating apps and smartphones and technology and everything existed was, like you said, you go to call that person, even if it was a cell phone, when all you had was calling and texting, you would get that anticipation would almost build sometimes in a new relationship where you're newly dating and maybe you've been together for a week or two and you send a text. And for myself, working in the restaurant industry, I wouldn't have my phone on the floor.
Yeah.
Fair enough, someone would send me a text, and I know back in the day that I had girls who would text me, and then if I didn't answer for 5 hours, they'd be like, oh, I thought you didn't like me anymore. And sure, initially the mentality might be negative, but I feel like being on the flip side of that, texting a girl and not hearing back for a few hours, that anticipation builds. You'd be like, you have that, you're in your own head.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, but then she texts back and she goes, oh, I'm so happy to hear from you. And then you have that immediate relief, and the anticipation has subsided, and you're like, oh, she does like me, and we are going to date now. But I feel like that doesn't exist anymore because now everyone expects everybody to answer right away.
Mhm.
Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, short of being
Yeah.
like, oh, why didn't you answer? I was at the gym for an hour.
Yeah.
And then people get upset. They're like, well, you should have had your phone on. You'd be like, I was working out. Like,
Yeah.
but there's that immediate gratification from social media and just the accessibility of everybody that I think has really like removed that opportunity of anticipation and that relationship. Like, there's a cliche term that is, what is it? Something makes the heart grow.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah. Like that.
You
It
don't have
does.
enough
It
absence.
really,
Yeah.
and I feel like even though we're absent from people physically, we're not absent from anybody.
Yeah.
Like, you can get a hold of anybody, especially now with like all the Zoom chats and Teams meetings and Instagram, and every social media platform has a video chat option. So you have no excuse. If you're under the age of 50, you have no excuse to be like, oh, I can't video chat. You'd be like, no, do you have a cell phone? It has a camera. You have some app that has a video chat. You're accessible to everyone all the time.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, in that, like, you even, you get blue check marks when somebody read it. You get left on red. You're like, oh, God.
Oh,
Like,
God.
I know they saw it. Or I see 3 dots. There they go. Oh, they stopped. What? It's
Yeah.
like,
It's
so, like, no
infuriating.
wonder we're, like, riddled with anxiety. And so, like, I ask you, as somebody who, like, has dated, it's like you've gone through, it's really interesting. I'm so glad that it's you that I'm talking to, because you've gone through different stages of dating. You have like real life, have to call the girl on the phone because there's one phone in the house kind of dating, which is like my high school era, your high school era.
100%.
And there's like online dating where you're like, don't really want to do it. Then there's like, app dating where it sounds like maybe you've done it.
Yeah. Well, I've attempted to do it. It hasn't gone very well. But I mean, like, so I dated a girl this past through the summer into the fall, and we met on a dating site, and we dated for like 5 months.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out, but that's how we met. We met on Hinge.
Yeah. Great.
And yeah, like, it was fine, but yeah, I've definitely gone through, like, I remember, like you said, being in high school, and my first high school girlfriend, I would have to call her house, and her dad hated me.
Yeah, and you're like, hi, sir. Okay. All right,
yeah, well, either that, like, I remember to a point where, like, he didn't want us dating, and he would hang up if I called, and that's it. That's barrier.
That's done.
You're like, okay, what am I gonna do? So I remember being like, okay, well, maybe I'll get my friend to come over to my house and call her and be like, hey, is Crystal there? So I could like then talk. Like, there was like, he was a bit of a tyrant kind of guy, but like,
yeah.
I remember doing that. And now I don't know what high school kids do now when they go to call their girlfriend. They just call their own cell phone, I guess.
This is what I'm saying. So like, you've been exposed to these different things. So you know what it's like to have the parent barrier.
Yeah,
you know what it's like that, she's not directly accessible.
Yeah.
Dating apps, COVID dating. Gotcha. I don't even want to know what that's like. So then it's like, okay, so now if we are primed for a sexual revolution, I think we are. Like, I think something is either happening or gonna happen. My prediction, especially in keeping with, like, I know this is just one thing that one research fellow said about like sexting dropping during the pandemic, but I feel like it's in the same beat. It's in the same direction. Like, as a single, cisgender, heterosexual man, whatever, are you willing to swing back and sit in the living room of like somebody's house? And like, are you willing to go like, hey mom, hey grandma, hey aunt, or whatever, do you know somebody who's a human being, who's like a nice girl, and like, I will go to her house and sit and I'll talk to her stupid parents. I'll sit there and listen.
Yeah.
Because anything is better than this.
Yeah. I absolutely. And I think, dating for sure. I agree with you. And I had a very similar conversation about this with one of my best friends recently. And I think that hopefully, like you said earlier, there will be a distinct end to this pandemic. And I think when we come out of it, you look at, like, history repeats itself. And I think we are primed for another roaring 20s.
Yeah, something's going to happen. Yeah.
People, when this pandemic is, if there ever is, oh God, I hope, eventually, I will say when, not if, when this pandemic is over, people are going to go, people like myself who have been single through the pandemic, you know, prime age, 30s, late 20s, whatever, you're there. We're just going to go nuts. And it's going to be like,
stop for a second, if I may.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt you. Go nuts sexually? I'm going to go on a tear of hookups? Or are you going to go nuts intimately? Where you're going to go on a tear of like snuggle? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is your go nuts? Because I would have thought sex go nuts. And maybe it'll spike. Like, maybe you'll be like, oh, like, fuck it, I'm crazy. I'm horny out of my mind. I'm going to kill somebody. Yeah. Okay, so everyone's like, I'm going to do it. But I think that hookup novelty, I don't know. I think it's wearing off. And I think they're like, no. Yeah. It's going to be some kind of go nuts. Like, I need to see my family. I don't know. I want to be close to somebody.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think
it's the hell with Zoom. I don't want to see Zoom.
No, I don't want to digitally do anything anymore. Yeah. I want to see and interact and like touch people and go and dance with them. And I'm not even a big dancer, but I like if I had the opportunity right now to go to a club with some girl who was like, let's go dancing, I would dance from 4 p.m. till 4 a.m.
I want to dance too. Oh my God.
It's just, it's those things you take for granted. But I think what I mean by like going, you know, like the roaring 20s, balls to the walls, I think it'll be everyone differently. It'll affect differently. Like for someone like myself, I want to go and I want to do the things that I can't do right now. And it's not just, I want to go out and have a bunch of sex. I don't want to just hook up. I want to meet someone. Yeah. But I want to go and just live this full, luscious life with someone that I meet. But I do want to have that relationship. I want to go and do fun things. I want to travel. I want to get dressed up to the nines, and I want to go to things that I never would have gone to before. I want to get dressed up, and I want to go to the opera and the ballet and go drink champagne and have cocktails and oysters and just, you know, be with that person doing these things that we can't do right now.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is that nature of feeling trapped and feeling lonely and definitely being like, I want to go do these things, but I don't want to do them by myself. I want to have that intimacy, like you said. Mm-hmm. I just want someone to do them with. Yeah. That isn't my friend. Like, I love my best friend. She's great. But I want that relationship. I want to get married and have kids. And you know, before I do that, I want to go and get, you know, wasted at a ballet first. I think
there's going to be a lot of more open-mindedness, not just like sexual open-mindedness, but like, you know, everything open-minded. I'll try it. I'll do it. I'll go there. I'll see it. Whatever. Take me there. I you know, and like this loneliness crisis that was happening, and it like pre-pandemic, it was already kind of happening. People were like, you know, connected via the internet, but so disconnected, like, you know, lacking intimacy. This loneliness, you know, crisis is like every single human being on planet Earth got a taste of loneliness. You know, you're like, oh God, I don't want to live like this. This is terrible. Like, nobody should live like this. Oh my gosh. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Greg, thanks so much for coming on, talking about sex and tech with us. Of course. And for being so honest. And then once this pandemic is over in like 100 million years, we will reflect on this conversation and see if we were right.
In a bar with real people.
In a bar with real people. Yeah. And we will be, if we're correct, we will all be very intimate with each other.
We'll do another episode in person.
Yeah.
When we can do that.
Oh my God. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone. Bye.